Welcome to another special bonus episode of the Food for Thought podcast. I'm your host, Erin Hallstrom. When it comes to digital transformation initiatives, have you ever wondered what the top food and beverage companies are doing? Here to help answer that question is Eric Campagna, Food and CPG Machine Health Lead for Augury. Join Eric and I as we talk about what's working and not working for the top food and beverage processors, as well as the importance of taking risks, particularly when it comes to digital transformation. We talk about which digital transformation initiatives could provide the most impact, as well as how manufacturers can address their current business challenges with new technologies. We wrap things up talking about machine health and how it can increase food and beverage manufacturers' competitive advantage. Enjoy the episode.
Welcome to the special bonus episode of the Food for Thought podcast. I really want to dig in and learn more from you, Eric. So I have a question for you. When it comes to digitalization initiatives, what would you say the top performing food and beverage companies do better than the rest?
Sure. So, having been in a position to speak with a lot of innovative organizations, even across industries, you get to see themes, right? What works, what doesn't work. And, to answer the question around what do top performing food and beverages companies do, I think first starting with what doesn't work. And what we've noticed is starting with the technology. So they're constantly evaluating, looking at the market, but technology is a tool at the end of the day, right? And it's almost like trying to shop for hammers, but not knowing what kind of house you're building. So going back to what do the top performers do, they first and foremost, they start by defining the problem at hand. So what is the impact of solving that problem? How does it step change the organization? How does it transform and change the way that they do business? And what that provides them with is a really clearly defined compass as to where they're headed, and then they can work backwards to figure out then what is the best technology to look at and what's going to help them get there the fastest. And two organizations that come to mind that do this really well are Colgate-Palmolive and PepsiCo.
Well, hammers and houses. I love that analogy, and it really kind of gives it some perspective, really helps visualize. Another question for you. Can you explain the importance of taking risks, particularly when it comes to digital transformation?
I would first start by saying don't be scared, right? Risk management is as much an art as it is a science. And one of the biggest traps that we see enterprises fall into is, the infamous analysis paralysis, where they're constantly looking at the market, evaluating technologies, and searching for that perfect solution to solve every problem. And why that can be challenging and costly is if you go back to your first question, Erin, which is around top performing organizations, they understand what the opportunity cost is at hand. So for all those months that companies are evaluating technologies, it could be costing them millions per month, right? And at the end of the day, it's easy to forget with all the technology that you're doing business with people. And there will be bumps in the road. So it's more important to take a direction, accept that there will be risks, but find a partner who's there and ready to overcome them together, and don't be afraid to start.
I definitely think we can all understand that impact of analysis paralysis. For certain, a lot of us have dealt with that. So I have another question for you. What are the highest impact use cases to start with when rolling out digital transformation initiatives?
Yeah, so I think the term highest impact, that has to be defined. And again, going back to the first question, defining the problem at hand. What is going to provide the most impact? And we found, that it is unique to every enterprise. Each company has their own challenges. But, in today's climate, especially in food and beverage, the common theme that we see and hear about is that they're sold out, meaning there's more demand than production that can be made to feed that demand. So, focusing on any initiatives that can help organizations increase the capacity from their existing assets directly ties to improving their top line revenue. And ultimately, you'll find most digital initiatives are mapped to top line revenue.
Yeah, I know we're definitely hearing a lot about supply and demand lately. So can you talk to me more about how manufacturers can address their current business challenges with new digital technology?
Sure, the perfect segue. So anybody that's looked at the news lately, two common themes you're constantly seeing are labor and supply chain issues. So you've got plenty of news around this great resignation, you've got strikes, you've got supply chain shortages, and manufacturers are looking for ways, how do you tackle this by looking and using technologies? And a survey that we took of executives and what was their highest priority is 69% of them said increasing capacity in production, and 62% of them is focusing on workforce efficiency. So those two areas are both top of mind. Huge advantage of digital tools is it really helps supply chains run more efficiently, which ultimately tie into increasing capacity, which, as we mentioned, was one of the top concerns. Now, tech is also a force multiplier and always has been, and so it really helps enable companies to do more with less resources as they're facing these ever-growing constraints in the market. The last item to mention, too, and I think often gets forgotten, is around people. So when organizations have the best technologies, they often attract the best talent and also retain the best talent. And this is one way to combat those major concerns that companies are facing in the market today.
Can we talk about machine health? Like, what is it?
Yeah, so machine health transforms reliability, maintenance, operations, and asset management by using technologies like AI and IoT and unifies them into a single source of truth that manufacturers use to steer their supply chains.
How does machine health increase a food and beverage manufacturer's competitive advantage?
Yeah, so before we can talk about competitive advantage, I think it's important to understand or frame this as to what is currently putting food and beverage organizations at a disadvantage. And right now, the times are unique. There's more demand than supply and production that can be made. So any food and beverage manufacturer that cannot make enough product is losing top-line revenue because the demand exceeds what they can make. And by not doing that, they're missing out on capital and funding that can feed growth initiatives, such as moving into emerging markets, adding new SKUs, potentially adding new production lines. And so tying this back to machine health is able to help organizations have more efficient production lines, less disruptions, and then ultimately more capacity out of existing assets. And this, again, ties back to being able to provide products, get them to the shelf. Consumers are buying their favorite brands of either soda or toothpaste, and if they're not on the shelf and the competitor is, they may be switching. And you times it over thousands, that can move markets. And so machine health is able to help ensure that organizations can get their products on the shelf and ultimately to the consumers.
Well, Eric, you provided so much great information for us today. I want to thank you so much for being on this special bonus episode of the Food for Thought podcast.
Thanks for having me, Aaron. It's fun being here.
For everyone listening to the Food for Thought podcast today, thank you for tuning in. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and just about everywhere you can listen to a podcast. Be sure to tune in next time as we talk more about the stories behind the headlines of the food and beverage industry. Take care. Have a great day.